everyone. Today we have a real treat for you. My really good friend and mentor, Olli Haaskivi, is here with us today. Say hi, Olli.
Hi, how are you?
And we're going to be talking about something really impressive that he does, which is that he is all over the place in theater, in film, in TV. Like, truly the most credits, to the point where we're going to make actually a separate video coming up next week where we're going to talk about every credit he's done and what he's learned, because it's truly incredible. Olli is who I go to when I have to coach for an audition, and he's helped me out so much in so many ways. So it's really an honor that you're here with us. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
By the way, this is School to Stage, a weekly show where we talk about theater, about acting, about musical theater, about auditioning. So if you're into that kind of thing, please subscribe, feed that YouTube monster, hit the like button for Olli. Thank you guys. All right, here we go. Dear Olli.
Hi.
You went to the University of Michigan's musical theater program.
The rumors are true, yeah.
Yes, and I have confirmed that you did get a musical theater degree, which usually would mean you are veering towards the stage craft. Mm-hmm. However, you work so much doing television.
I've done a lot of television.
I'm not kidding, you guys. You go to Olli's IMDb page, and it's like he's been on every show that shoots in New York City. Like, every time I coach with him, he's like, oh, yeah, I did that show. It's pretty remarkable. And also the breadth of all the theater and all the TV and film stuff he's done. Like, I don't know. It's pretty impressive. Look at him. Just a lot, you guys. So how have you made that transition from, like, I'm on the Broadway path all the way to all these incredible credits?
Thank you for saying that. Yeah, I mean, I think that for me, a good part is a good part, a great story is a great story, a great director is a great director, and I feel so much more interested in seeking out those points as my priority as opposed to a medium as my priority. I mean, I went to the University of Michigan, which is a great musical theater program, and it is 97% focused on musical theater, at least while I was there. And musical theater and, like, somehow figuring out how to pass your academic classes that you don't have time to study for.
Can confirm.
Yeah. And so I moved to New York with a musical theater degree in hand, but was sort of vaguely interested in television and film. We had one acting for the camera class my sophomore year at Michigan, which I really enjoyed and got a lot out of, and still think about some of those lessons from that class for sure. But that was really just sort of like a blip on the radar. It was enough, though, for me to go, oh, there's something interesting there. I remember feeling like I enjoyed that class. I had some good moments in that class. But again, all of my headspace was in musical theater. All of my friends were doing musical theater. Everything that I had, you know, my entire brain space for 4 years was musical theater. And then the first audition, we did a showcase right after we graduated. I got an agent. My first audition that agent got me was to be the lead of a movie. And I remember thinking, what in the world do I know about that? That's so frightening. But I got callback after callback after callback for that movie and for that casting office. And so that sort of planted a very, very early seed that, oh, there might be something there for me. But I was still, the bigger part of my brain was like, you just graduated from musical theater school. Try to be in Mamma Mia. Like, try to be in Mary Poppins. The High School Musical tour was out. I remember those. But that very first audition experience, I do think put it in the back of my brain that, like, oh, you auditioned for that and it went really well and people liked your work, but you also felt comfortable. And so that was sort of the first indication that something might be up.
Do you feel like you went through a process of, like, okay, on Tuesday I'm auditioning for the High School Musical tour, so I'm going to act like this. And then on Thursday I'm going in for this film, so I need to do this and, like, I don't know, squish myself down for a camera performance?
Right. You know, I didn't. And I wonder if that's a problem, actually. Because I do. I mean, I really do feel like good acting is good acting. And I feel sort of allergic to conversations that people like to have where they're sort of like, when you're on camera, you shouldn't move your face and never blink and all of these things because I do. Or like when you're on stage, that's the time to like be enormous. Like I don't really buy any of that. And I do know that there are obviously technical considerations in both of the mediums, that on stage you have to find your light and on camera you have to hit your mark and not run over the Steadicam person who's walking with you. Like there are, I'm not saying it's the exact same thing, but I'm also saying that it is not as different as I think that some people might lead you to believe.
I feel like with my friends, as we have helped each other make many self-tapes through these like 3 years that we've been out of school, you know, it's the same stuff. It's just you do start realizing like, okay, maybe I didn't need to be like that loud.
Right.
But once you're like, when you really know what you're doing, then you stop like relying on what feels like, I don't know, like these are the artifacts of good theater.
I think it's the same muscle that you naturally act differently in a theater with 25 seats than in a theater with 3,000 seats. Your body just does something different. The best way I've ever had it explained to me was by this woman named Ellen Novak, who teaches she teaches the on-camera class at Juilliard and at Yale. I remember Ellen saying, the only difference, the only thing that you need to be concerned about is that on stage, if you're my scene partner, my energy needs to reach you, but it also needs to reach past you to the back wall. Whereas on camera, my energy only has to get that far, as opposed to that far and then that far.
Yeah.
And that goes for your voice, that goes for everything. And I think that is a much more helpful way of thinking about the scaling than one medium is always bigger and one medium is always smaller.
Because that still puts your target as your scene partner.
Totally.
Because the other way is sometimes in theater, you're like, you're not talking to anyone but the back row, which is like admirable in some sense, but also eventually you're like, okay, well, I don't feel like there's any real talking going on.
Right. And I mean, I really do believe that you can be a lot bigger on camera than some people would lead you to believe, and you can be a lot smaller on stage than those same people would lead you to believe. I mean, if you think about, I don't know, if you think about like The Band's Visit, which I thought was so gorgeous, and those performances are so detailed and so finely articulated, and then I don't know why this is the first thing that came to mind, but I caught a little bit of Bad Moms on TV the other night, which is like Kathryn Hahn and Kristen Bell swinging for the fences. And that movie wouldn't work if they weren't swinging for the fences.
Yeah.
And so I think it's so much more about what is the world of this story, what is the tone of this story, than it is like, these are always the rules of this and these are always the rules of that.
Yeah.
And I mean, my priority is always to be honest and to be clear. Mm-hmm. That's like my priorities number 1 through 50.
So when you said the whole like don't run over the Steadicam man, personally, those are the type of things that I'm like, ooh, if I step on a set and I just broadcast like green, you know, because it's like hitting the marks and all that, like what can you do to start to get that very technical on-set experience that just takes like hours to get?
Right. I mean, I think the first thing that comes to mind is you have to be forgiving of yourself. You have to know that this is new to you, and you don't have to project some sort of, I got this, I know all about this. That's not the same thing as telling everybody, I don't know what I'm doing. But I think that letting yourself off the hook, I think, is a nice thing, because it's really easy to beat yourself up about not knowing certain things. Because especially, you know, this isn't true for everybody, but most people who do theater for a living have been doing it since they were really young. And so there's so much that's just second nature. And And that's not true for quite a lot of television actors and film actors. Someone has to give you your first job, and there are so many things that you just can't learn until you have a job. That being said, one thing that I still do from time to time, I don't know if COVID rules will allow this to happen, but it was really hugely helpful for me on a number of occasions to, you're often called to set hours before you actually need to be there. You go through hair and makeup, you go through wardrobe. It's not uncommon for you to then sit in your trailer or in your dressing room for 4 or 5 hours while they are shooting another scene or multiple other scenes before they get to yours. Not always, but I started asking, usually a PA will say, you have 3 or 4 hours before we're going to get to you, so take a nap, read a book, whatever. And I, on a handful of occasions, have said, is it possible that I can just go watch? And just, is there a chair in a corner that is not disruptive to anybody where I can just sort of watch what's going on? And sometimes the answer is no, and that's fine. But a good amount of times the answer was sort of like, yeah, fine, just go. And so that was so helpful for me, rather than spinning out by myself with my nerves in my trailer for hours, to go, and you're not only watching the mechanics of the set, but you're getting a sense of the energy, you're getting a sense of a director's style, you're just getting, you're getting to focus on things and absorb things so that when you show up on set to do your scene, you're not totally cold. That kind of watching, when I was allowed to, which was most of the time, was tremendously educational to me.
Totally. Well, I'm just picturing you get your one-liner on CSI, but you get to watch that lead cast who's been doing that show for a decade and see the well-oiled machine of how that works. I was like, yeah, that sounds fascinating.
Yeah, because a lot of it, so much of anything, as it turns out, is just being around it and absorbing it and having enough chances at bat to start to understand how the world works. The same way that in a theater, probably from the time you were very young, you started learning about what your relationship with a stage manager is like, and how you deal with the props person and the wardrobe person, and so all of, you just, that is the thing about being on camera that is a bummer, is that you can take classes to learn how to audition for on-camera jobs, and those are largely really important and valuable, but there's no great way to learn about being on a set. The same way that if you do a scene in an acting class from The Streetcar Named Desire, that pretty closely replicates the experience of being on stage. It's not the same exact thing, but it's pretty close. And there's no great way to simulate that for what it's like to show up to shoot a gigantic TV show. Be forgiving of yourself, because it takes a lot of time to learn these things. And in my experience, when I have said, I'm so sorry, I have no idea what that means, people are very happy to tell me. And that's 100,000 times better than what I've also done once or twice and gone yeah, great, got it. And then they leave and you go, I have no idea what that means. Just gonna hope for the best on this next take. And then more often than not, you have not done the thing that they asked. And just admitting,
humility, always.
Always.
Okay, when you said something about the casting classes, so for those of you who do not live in, New York or LA yet, there are places that you can go. There's one in New York called One-on-One, where you can take classes with casting people, real world casting people, who will usually see you, talk to you, maybe you do a little scene for them, and then they give you some feedback, and hopefully next time you come across their desk, they will be like, she was in class, she was good. And then hopefully that gives you some points. How have you found that these classes help you, and what have you learned from doing them?
Yeah. I know a lot of people have a lot of different feelings about those. And I have a lot of different feelings about them. But because the bad version of it is that you paid a not small amount of money to basically audition for a casting person. That casting person is not a good teacher. They're not really interested in being there. They're just there to collect an extra paycheck. And that totally does happen.
Yeah.
But the better version of it, which also happens, is that you're learning from people who are experts at what you are interested in, because they watch auditions all day long. They make offers all day long. And you can make a really positive introduction for yourself with someone that you didn't know before, and someone that maybe your agent wasn't able to get you an audition with this office, and you go and meet this office and you make a good impression and they start calling you in. And the other benefit of it is that you get a sense of that person's temperament and a sense of their vibe. And so you know when you audition for them, even if it's years later and it's not connected to that class at all, you can remember, oh, that was a really sweet person. I bet that the audition will be a nice experience. Or that person is very down to business, and if my audition is down to business, that's not them being rude, that's just their personality. I now feel like I have really solid and wonderful agents and managers, but that was not always the case for various reasons. And so those classes were my way of meeting a lot of these people that I was not able to meet any other way. And the other thing that I would say about it is that I went into those classes as prepared as I would be for my auditions. I didn't go into those classes and wing it. I showed up basically saying through my work, this is what you would get if you brought me into audition. Because I also know that casting television in particular, you don't, this week you're casting the episode that starts shooting next week. Even if you want to meet a ton of actors, you don't really have time to. And so they are calling in people that they think are pretty sure bets. Mm-hmm. And so it's not that you haven't gotten called in for them because they have something against you or something against your agency. It's just like they have to cast 25 parts in this week's episode of The Blacklist. You don't have time to see 50 people per role. And so you have to get on the radar somehow as an actor that is good and reliable and will come in and give a good audition. But I also have to say, there are relationships that I have to this day that started because I took someone's class in 2011.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I feel like if I have had any kind of show business strategy, it has just been to cast the net as far and as wide as possible. And so that meant, I had an agent, but I was also going to open calls, and I was going to EPAs, and I was taking classes, and I was doing student films, and I was looking on Actors Access for whatever random things I could find. And so to me, those classes were just an extension of that sort of feeling of, well, let's try this and see what happens. And I do advocate that as a pretty good career strategy.
Yeah.
At least for me.
So that's my next question is, if you were graduating today, let's ignore COVID a little bit. Maybe not, but just a little bit.
Right. And we can pretend that it's a world where we have recovered safely.
Exactly. And you have the brain you have now, you know everything that you know. Mm-hmm. What would be your game plan in regards to the business?
That's such a good question. I do think it's important to try a little bit of everything, because it's such a wide business in terms of there's Broadway, there's off-Broadway, there's regional theater, there's tours, there's commercials, there's voiceovers, there's television, there's film. Like, there's animation voiceovers. There's no end to the ways you can make your living acting. And I, again, I came out of a school that was very, very, very focused on one version of an acting career. And I think that I realized relatively quickly that there were other versions, and maybe other versions that might be more suitable and pleasurable to me. But I wish I had realized that a little bit faster, because I do think, I think a sort of unintended downside of coming out of something that's so focused is that it can make you feel like I'm not achieving the things in that one very narrow lane that I was taught to believe are important things to achieve. Is that wrong? Is that bad? And I didn't suffer from that anxiety in a huge crippling way, but I definitely had a little bit of it. And so I wish, I think I maybe could have started to expand those horizons a little bit sooner than I did, if not immediately. But, I'm thankful I figured it out ever. So.
Yeah. I feel like a thing that you have helped me with a lot is to think of the game in a more like tactical way, and to kind of count every little step and every experience as a victory and a step in the right direction, rather than like this whole emotional rejection drama that we love to dramatize in our heads.
Sure.
So, yeah, I love that is how you look at this, especially with people that you like coach and stuff.
That's so nice. Because the emotional side is always going to be there, right? It's always going to be disappointing, to say the least, to get really close to something that feels like it would be a dream job and then to not get it. That disappointment is normal because we care a lot. We love what we do. We have hopes and dreams for ourselves. But on the other hand, it's also just how it works. It's literally the definition of it is that we go to auditions and most of the time don't get the job. And so trying to recognize that as just simply the machinery working the way that the machinery is built, but also, to try to view it as a bigger picture that, okay, I didn't get that job, but that was a really good first audition for a casting office that I had never met before. Or I didn't get that job, but I actually am proud of the work that I did, or that person had never called me back before and now I got a call back from them. Like, there is, all of those things are hugely important and huge signs of progress that are not getting a job, which is a bummer, obviously, and I think always will be a bummer. I don't think there is a place at which you're suddenly immune to it. You might get to a place where you might not need the money as badly as you do when you're just starting out, and so it's not disappointing in the way of like, I needed that job and I needed that money. But I think emotionally those feelings of, oh, I really wanted that thing, I really cared about that thing, and I'm so sad I didn't get it. I think those are true. I think those feelings happen at every level of this. I've lived in New York City for 12 years, and it really took a long time for things to get moving in a way that was consistent. But I had a lot of encouragement for a long time. I was getting called back for a lot of things. I was getting, there was 1 week, maybe like a year into moving to New York City, where in 1 week, I think it was 2, but maybe 3 different directors reached out to me via email to say, this one didn't come your way, but I'm so happy I got to meet you. I'm so happy I know your work now. And
that's amazing.
Yeah, and at the time, I think I was mostly just kind of sad and mad that I didn't get those jobs.
Right, like why not me if you love me so much, Jesus.
Right, and I wanted them so badly, and but looking back now with the hindsight that I have, I'm able to see that as that's actually really huge encouragement. And you can make a few breadcrumbs into a meal if you have to, and I do think that that's important because these relationships can take a long time to I don't want to say to pay off because that sounds transactional in a way that I think is sort of cold, but these relationships can take a long time to blossom or whatever you want to say. It like to judge success, especially artistic success, on a scale of did I get the thing or did I not get the thing, is only going to lead you to be depressed and frustrated most of the time. And it's not real or realistic. We have to acknowledge that a lot of little things happen to make the big thing happen.
And don't you feel like sometimes like you'll get an opportunity and then you go, oh, it's because I met this person at this class who told this person and I did this play and then they saw me here and now I'm here. Yeah. And once those line up, you're like, oh my God, I shouldn't have cried 2 years ago over that one lost thing. But like, it's so magical that people know people. Right. And if you do good work consistently, it'll start to show.
And that it's people's job to remember that. It's literally the definition of their job to remember, Aline didn't get that job, but she was so good at X, Y, and Z. And so the next time I need a part that is X, Y, and Z, I'm going to call her first.
One thing you told me recently that I keep thinking about, a lot of the time when you're like fresh out of school, the things you're auditioning for theater-wise are like replacements on tours and maybe Broadway and like regional productions where they're trying to like do a show that's been done before. So you're very much going into, say, obviously, like with your heart and your spirit, but like going into fit a role that's been created. Whereas with TV, it's new every time. And especially in this age that we live in when there's literally too much content than we even have time to watch, you're originating a role every single day that you're in the audition room.
Yeah, that's such a nice way of putting it. But so I had a long track record of that kind of thing happening. And I did have, the great majority of theater that I've done has been new plays and new musicals where there isn't a mold yet. They don't know what it is yet. And so I could get work doing that and love that and want to do that forever. I could get no work when it came to replacing people or doing regional productions of things that everybody knew. And yeah, I think your point is exactly right, that on television and in movies, no one has ever played the part before. And so they can adjust the age, they can change the gender, they can go, why don't we write them something in the next episode? Or, we didn't think this would be a large role in our series, but this person is exciting, so why don't we change this one scene role into a 4-episode role or whatever? And there's something that, I don't want to say that it's more creative, but maybe it's a little bit more open.
Yeah, it's like such a freeing thing to be like, oh, I'm appreciated here and I like it. And it lines up.
Yeah, and I remember so vividly this one experience where I'd had a couple of TV jobs, but not a ton. I was still really like just at the beginning phase of learning about all of that and working in that. But within an hour, I had an audition for the USA show Royal Pains that was on for many years that Bonnie Finnegan and Steve Jacobs cast. And I auditioned for that show a million times. I really think how I learned to audition for television was by auditioning for Royal Pains so many times. So I had an audition for Royal Pains, and then an hour later had my 12th or 13th audition for this Broadway show that I had been auditioning for since it had opened. I had auditioned for so many different replacements in the show. It always never completely clicked, but no one could figure out why. I was just never getting the job, even though I kept getting called in, called back. The director would see me, the associate director would see me. And I just noticed in myself such a huge difference in how I felt, where I was at Royal Pains in a very small waiting room, feeling like I feel really comfortable here. I feel like, who knows if I'll get this job or not, but I know how to deliver something that is viable, that will be useful to you in some way, and I feel comfortable and I feel confident. And then crossing the street an hour later to go audition for that musical and just feeling like, I don't know what you people want from me, and I don't think you know what you want from me, and I don't know why we keep doing this, because it just makes me feel bad about myself and sad. And again, that really did feel like, I think the AP Lit term is the epitomizing example of
Yes.
of just, I've been having those instincts for a while, and that day just sort of felt like, okay, it's very clear how you feel here and how you feel there, and how other people feel about you here versus there. And so let's just go here. And I'm so thankful that I'm so thankful that anything has happened, but I'm so thankful that that clarity was there.
Yeah.
And there was something that was so sort of shocking about it as a person who imagined themselves primarily having a career in musical theater. But I also remember really vividly that Brent Wagner, who used to run the University of Michigan's musical theater program, he used to say, or maybe it was even his email signature, used to say, the secret of life is the graceful execution of Plan B. And I remember being like a 19-year-old college student and being like, I don't really believe that. And now as a 34-year-old person, feeling like not only is that 100% true, but one could make the argument that my entire television career is just the graceful execution of Plan B.
Yeah.
And again, thank God, I'm so thankful for it.
Waggy, he's got those. He's got those phrases on lock.
He does know a thing or two.
He does. Wise man. All right, I have one petty question because
wait.
I've been wondering about this.
Oh God.
When you don't get a job, do you watch, especially for TV because it's easy, you can find it.
Yeah.
Do you go like seek out that episode and see like, oh, that's the person they went with. Let me like figure out why, or learn a thing or two, or make myself feel less bad because maybe they cast someone that was like fully different from me, or I don't know. I catch myself having that instinct to want to watch, and sometimes I do, and it's really helpful, and I learn. And sometimes I'm like sadder. Do you know?
Right. I think it does in part depend on like the mood you're in that day. Because there are certainly moments that I've had where, there have been a couple of things that I've been up for where, and a couple of them have come really close, where, 6 months later, the posters are all over New York and the picture of the boy who got it is all over New York.
Yep.
And that's just part of it. That's just how this whole thing works. But I do think that more often than not, when I have watched things that I really wanted, or gone to see, if it's a play or a musical, gone to see something that I really wanted, I really do think that more often than not, my experience has been like, oh my God, look at them. They're a genius, and I would have cast them too. Like, how exciting for that person. And I think, like you said, you can tactically understand a lot of the time, like, oh, they were putting together a family and my coloring just doesn't fit with the mom and the dad, or my presence would be too similar to the person that I was playing opposite, and that just never would have made sense or something. More often than not, you can not only see the logic, but think it was a good idea on their part. I do think part of one's ability to stick with all of this is you have to develop a muscle that bounces back really quickly, and so hopefully by the time something is actually out in the world, you have moved on. And I mean, Denise Goff, that amazing actress, said something that I love so much, that she said that she decided at a certain point that it's not the producers deciding, it's not the director deciding, it's that the character is, you know, this sort of spirit that's floating in the air, and the character is deciding what body and voice and face and heart do I need. And the character will get the form that they need the most. And I remember her saying that really helped her not be upset with a director or think that producer hates me or be jealous of another actor or something like that. And I thought that was so like so beautiful and a little bit of a game changer, because then you're not sitting in a waiting room going, oh God, they're here, they get everything I want. You're going, you know, the spirit of Sam is floating in the air, and Sam is deciding where he's gonna be best served.
That's the type of thing that really helps me.
Me too. And you know, it is work. It doesn't always come naturally to feel that way, but I do think that it's work that is worth doing. Because for your longevity and for your happiness and for your ability to be a good supportive member of this community. And also, like, I didn't get that thing, which left me available to get the way better thing 3 weeks later, and thank God. Like, I do think the more you can cultivate a long view of this thing and imagine it as a career that is hopefully very long, with a lot of different phases, with a huge variety of wonderful, fulfilling experiences, as opposed to just like, I need this one thing to happen. And again, sometimes it's work that you have to put in to feel that way, but I stand by doing that work.
Yeah. Olli, thank you. This is amazing.
I'm so glad.
I feel great. I feel inspired. Okay, everyone, come back next week for part 2. We're going to be talking about all of Olli's credits and what he's learned with each one, which I'm like personally already like, yes, take out the notepad, let's write this down. So yeah, hit that subscribe button, like the video, feed the YouTube monster. Yeah. Any questions you have, please comment, because we can, you know, tag team any answers that you might need. Anything you're curious about, no question is too simple or too small. Okay? So thank you so much.
Have a good week.
See you next time. Bye.